With Dave Robertson, there was a hearing a few minutes ago about the Floral Hill Cemetery, south of Chillicothe, and you have been a volunteer to help maintain the cemetery. So what are your feelings now that it's moving out of limbo and becoming on the road to being a public cemetery, which Huntington Township will maintain?
I think a lot of times, and I think we talked about this before, with the way the Ohio Revised Code is no different than fire code, electrical code, building code, and everything else. It can be interpreted in many different ways and all that. So I think it took just a long time to clear up a lot of the legal avenues to make it better understandable, and then getting the Ohio Department of Commerce back involved in all this stuff, House Bill 168, the whole thing is leading up to this. But I think if you look back in the beginning, and luckily I got 6 Attorney General opinions that go clear back to 1966, where I think it shows the true intention of the way the Ohio Revised Code law was written around cemeteries. I think we talked before about, the way it was written was mainly in the 50s, 60s, updated again in the 70s. So back then they had the morals and the character to not have to make things happen. They give you the ability. So that's the man, the can, and the Ohio Revised Code instead of the will and the shall, which makes you do it. So unfortunately, I think they just thought there wouldn't be a reason that they would have to force what we're at.
Why would anyone abandon a cemetery?
Yes.
Well, it sounds like it's going through.
Yeah,
so
we're finally.
Your efforts as heading up this volunteer effort, how is that going to change? How are you going to work with Huntington Township?
Well, the one thing, if you go back through and look and remember, and back when I first started, and my mom died in 2013, and we started this, and it was a mess, I had to actually get court approval in order to be able to go in and mow and dispose of the trash, because the sheriff said that if someone complained, they'd run me off, and then if I tried to throw away the trash, I'd be arrested. So it took a court order in order to even just go in there because of it being in limbo.
Otherwise, you'd be trespassing.
Yeah, well, or just, if you get hurt, or,
Yeah.
But it's no different than any abandoned property. If you want to go in and clean it up, just like a city, you're going to go in there and then you charge the owners. Well, there's a part in the Ohio Revised Code where if a cemetery in a township area becomes not cleaned up, doesn't look good, the township can actually go in there and mow and then charge the cemetery owners. So of course, with it being abandoned, you can't do that, but you still have to respect all those that are buried there. So I think that's the way the law was wrote, and then it just wasn't spelled out so deep to where it says, how do you determine it abandoned, and like what they're arguing now about the public and private, which I don't know. I mean, you can see where if you sell lots to the public, it's public cemetery. I mean, a private cemetery, the reason why they separated the law on that is not a privately owned public cemetery. That's like a family cemetery. So if you got a cemetery with your relatives on your farm somewhere in the back, of course you don't want the township and the state coming in and telling you what you can and can't do. That's what that is. So it just got a little bit muddled in there, and I think that's what took this long to get somewhere. But
you've been volunteering there for 10 years?
Yeah, well, I had to walk away so we could do all the legal work, the legal research and all that stuff. But yeah, since late 2012, 2013, after my mom died is when I found out about it. And then
and is she buried there?
My mom and my dad. My dad died the next year, and then he was buried there.
So what do you think you'll do now that things are changing, and after September, after September, Huntington will take over?
I promised them on the last one. I was like, look, everybody agrees that something has to be done, and there's no way you can pass it off to another private individual And then that's why I found it in the higher vice code where it says you can't sell it. It has to be transferred to a government agency. But anyway, even without all that, with the amount of area that it is, if you sell it to someone, we'll be back here in another 10 years doing the same damn thing. So, it doesn't do any good. It has to go, whenever a cemetery gets in trouble, that's why it's wrote where it defaults into the township. So a government agency takes it over, and then you're better apt to get consistent care. Because, a government's not going to default and go bankrupt, and they might not do everything they're supposed to, but, eventually, they'll do everything. So what I promised Huntington was, even if they just do a good faith effort and, not argue this and move forward, that now that I don't have to do all the legal research, I can go back to trying to recruit volunteers and everything, and go back there, and it puts cemetery back to at least what it was 2 years ago. So that's going to be our goal now, straighten up the markers, cleaning up the dirt. I haven't even been out there because I don't even want to see it. But then we'll start mowing and getting it back under control. So, which was my whole mission in the beginning, and I think I talked about on the Facebook page. One, you got to respect everyone that's buried out there, and especially the over 1,100 veteran. But on number two, it's like having a used car. If you got a used car, even though it runs pretty good, if it looks really bad, you're not going to sell it. But if it looks really nice and everything, you have a better chance of selling it, passing it on, people want it. So it's the same thing with cemetery. If it looks like it does right now, I don't blame Huntington Township saying, look, how in the world are we going to do this? But if we get it back to the way it was, for the last 10 years up until 2 years ago, then you're basically just walking in, taking over, and then start with the improvements, fixing the road, start re-leveling the markers, stuff. But it's already mowed, it looks good, it's presentable and usable to the family members. Right now, it's a mess.
So hopefully handing it over to Huntington Township better than you found it.
Yes. And then what we're looking at is, of course, once the deed's over into Huntington Township, then it's theirs. So then it's going to be up to them if they want us to help. But my whole point, even when we started this, was, whoever took it over, once they took it over, we would help them and assist them to the limit they want us to. So, of course, I can't afford to keep mowing that. That's ridiculous cost. But, we're more than willing to still do like an annual thing if they want us to come out, and maybe some of the bigger projects and things they got run into that they might need some help with. They figure out what they want to do, especially back in the maintenance garage and stuff, and they need some outside help and things like that. Maybe through our page we can reach some people that may be willing to donate, and as long as they accept it and say, yeah, hey, we'd be willing to let someone come in and do this and that. I think that's what it's going to take to get Floral Hills back up to where it needs to be. But that's going to be up to Huntington Township, once that deed's in their name. So,
do you think you deserve some compensation for all your effort?
No. It just like I told them when they was talking about appointing a receiver. And now all this is my interpretation of the code, but I got it pretty well backed up. But the receiver, all it does is supposed to clear up all the stuff like they talked about today, the liens and all that stuff. Once it's transferred to a government entity, i.e. township, all those liens go away. You don't levy lots. There's higher vice code states all that. I mean, same thing that happened at Circleville. They had $100,000 in tax liens or something. Well, as soon as it went to auction, it's all gone. It doesn't go. Now, if a private company sells a public cemetery to another private company, then of course the liens would transfer. But the whole point of it is, and just like when they talked about, paying for some attorney fees and stuff like that, I think all that's wrong. I think everybody realizes we all took a hit on this cemetery, and nobody should get anything off of this. And that way all the money goes to Huntington Township that's still in those accounts, so they can maintain it, improve it, and bring it back to a respectable place like it was way back when the hedges around, when the heart-shaped hedge was around the garden, all that stuff. So I don't think anybody should get any money out of this cemetery except the individuals burying their families there in Huntington Township, and those funds directly, which by a higher wise code has to be spent on cemetery operations. So the money, the perpetual care fund that's still there, some people think it's gone, they stole it all, that pre-need fund's there, perpetual care fund's there, all that should get transferred to the township so it's used for what it's meant to do, not because me or you had to do this, that, or something else, and now all of a sudden we want money, we want paid back. All that does is hurt the cemetery.
So people can learn more through your Facebook page.
Yeah, we'll start updating it, especially since we don't have to do so much research now. We'll start updating on everything that we learn. And then, of course, hopefully we'll start putting pictures of our mowing like we always did before. I always posted pictures. We got several people from out of state, a lot of people out of town, but I mean, we got a lot of people from out of state that have family there. So they rely on the Facebook page to see that their areas are taken care of, that the mowing's being done, that their graves are in a respectable position. So we'll start posting those pictures back as we get the areas done little by little. So.
And the name of your Facebook page is?
Floral Hills Memory Gardens.
All right, David Robertson, thank you very much.
Thank you.